Well, imagine living in a democratic nation that roughly spent an estimated amount of 60,000 crores of rupees on its general elections. Well, all this was happening while 129 million people of the same democratic nation were spending their lives in utter misery and poverty, utilizing meager resources, and were living unsophisticated and unhygienic lives. Well, welcome to Union of India, welcome to Bharat. We were talking about the 2019 general Lok Sabha elections. Our country has 543 Lok Sabha constituencies and back for the expenditure of these elections. Your constituency where you live in, with those bumpy roads and untreated sewage and garbage mismanagement and municipality which is lagging behind, that particular constituency of yours where you live in, that cost the Indian economy an arm as well as a leg with about 100 crores of expenditure for 2019 Lok Sabha elections. Now you might think, what for? Development? Well, you cannot be more wrong. All this money was spent on campaigns, electoral polls, on massive rallies conducted by politicians which apparently travel to the rural areas once in every 5 years. What for? Calling political parties names? What for? To beg for votes. Now, not giving all of you the unwanted reality check, let us get back to the present and talk about the winter session of Parliament 2024. Now, this particular winter session has gained limelight and attention all over the country because of its intense, spicy and political drama, legislative processes, discussions, debates, and notations between the India bloc, which is the opposition, and the ruling party BJP. This particular winter session actually showcased a multitude of circumstances and eye-catching events. For example, there were extensive and comprehensive debates over the Constitution on the occasion of 75-year anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution, as well as a no confidence motion was passed against the Rajya Sabha chairman Jagdeep Dhankar, who also happens to be the vice president of the country. Now, one of the most important things that caught the attention of everybody was the initiative put forward by the Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal on the floor of the Parliament. Now, this particular initiative introduced by the BJP government by Modi is One Nation, One Election policy. Now, all of you might have heard of this, and there is a lot of fuss regarding One Nation, One Election policy. Today, in this particular video, we are trying to analyze and understand how the government is trying to implement One Nation, One Election policy, what will be the amendments done to the existing articles of the Constitution, what other things will be inserted into the Constitution, and how the government is planning to maintain the electoral reforms through this particular policy. You should know about it because you are a citizen of the country, and you should be aware of the disadvantages and advantages and the very spicy political debate that is revolving around this particular policy. In a substantial step taken towards this One Nation, One Election initiative, the government basically appointed a high-level committee under the chairmanship of former President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind, and 7 other very notable members, including Subhash Kashyap, Home Minister Amit Shah, Harish Salve, Ghulam Nabi Azad, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, and many others. Now, this particular committee did extensive and comprehensive pan-India research. Now, by that, what do I mean? So, this committee basically questioned, interrogated, and interacted with 21,000 Indian voters all across the country and 47 different national, regional, and local parties in order to understand what does India want? What do the voters actually want? Now, this committee basically realized that 80% of the population of the country, 80% of the voters and 80% of the citizens are ready for a change. This committee submitted an extensive report to the present president of the country, Draupadi Murmu. Now, what's special about this report? This report basically runs up to 18,626 pages, and it outlines and highlights the recommendations, the advices, implementation process, and the amendments to the constitution necessary for the implementation of this initiative. For like the monumental shift that we are having, because we have fragmented elections all across, spread it all across the year. So now, one nation, one election policy, what has this committee basically advised? So Ramnath Kovind and his obviously 7 other notable members who are in the group, they basically suggested that in order to facilitate this initiative, we need to have a comprehensive electoral polls, which will basically be of the 3 different tiers of the government at once. What do I mean by that? So the people of the country, the voters, will vote for the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies and local bodies at once. This committee basically highlighted that the comprehensive elections will be held and conducted in 2 phases. Now, what are these 2 different phases? The first phase will be the general election phase. In the general election phase, the polls will be put on for both Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly. And in the second phase, the voters are going to vote for the 3rd tier of the government, which is the local body, municipality and panchayat. Now, let us understand what are the different implementation processes and amendments which have been advised by this high-level committee. Now, let us understand what this high-level committee has given recommendations for. Now, the entire comprehensive research and report that was submitted to Draupadi Murmu was basically around the fact that there will be certain amendments made to certain different articles of the Constitution. Let us understand it one by one. Now, first of all, there is going to be an insertion of Article 82A in the Constitution of the country. Now, this Article 82A will basically facilitate the president of the country to designate an appointment date. Now, you might have heard a lot of fuss going on around appointment date, whether it will be 2029 or 2034. Let us understand what it actually is. So, appointment date is going to be that one specific date, the first sitting of the Lok Sabha in that particular year, which will be the commencement of simultaneous elections in the country. Now, how will this actually take place? So the state legislative assemblies will actually have to synchronize themselves and their electoral polls with the Lok Sabha, and they will have to maintain the balance and the regular intervals. Now, here is the first major question, which also happens to be a bone of contention. What will happen if actually one of them dissolves? Like maybe the government in one of the state assembly dissolves. There is a dissolution. What will happen in that case? So, according to the report submitted to Draupadi Murmu by this high-level committee, they highlight the fact that in this particular circumstance, there are going to be special elections held for that particular state assembly. And now, the government which has been elected will be for the unexpired term. Well, this sounds very odd. This sounds actually very tough to understand. Let us try to make it easier for you to understand. Let us consider 2034 to be that one year where the appointment date is held. The president designated 2034 as the appointment year. Now, we will have a commencement of a 5-year term, right? Commencement of simultaneous elections. So obviously, naturally, the entire government of all the 3 different tiers will basically dissolve in 2039, right? Now, what happens if one of the governments dissolve in the middle of it? Maybe let us consider 2037. So in that particular circumstance, special assembly will be held in that particular state assembly. And now the government which has been elected will only be for the next 2 years. And after that, it is going to naturally dissolve. This is how the plan is right now. Along with the insertion of Article 82A, we will have amendments done to Article 83, which defines originally the duration of Lok Sabha. There will also be amendments done to Article 172, which originally defines the term of state legislative assemblies. Also, there are plans that there will be amendments to Article 324, which is going to empower the Election Commission of India to direct, control, administer, and manage VVPAT machines, EVMs, and comprehensive, simultaneous, synchronized elections in the entire nation at once of 3 different tiers. Yes, there will also be insertion of Article 324A, which will basically facilitate the local government bodies to synchronize their elections with Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. This is going to be very important for all of us to understand, because this is basically the future of the country. The NDA government, working under the effective leadership of Narendra Damodar Das Modi, has been proactive when it comes to the legal arena of the country. This particular government has made 22 amendments to the constitution in the past 10 years. This government has made headlines, coming up with landmark and monumental decisions. They have, for example, back in 2019, they abrogated the Article 370. They brought out the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act. From that to the very controversial Citizenship Amendment Act, to Triple Talaq Bill, to now the most Ram Mandir verdict. This particular government has been very proactive in the legal arena. And now the initiative One Nation, One Election policy has sparked significant and substantial debates and discussions all across the country, with the opposition who thinks that this particular scheme is beyond the pale. They find One Nation, One Election policy to be outlawed. They think this policy is a threat to federalism and decentralization of the country. However, talking about the One Nation, One Election policy, Modi government has been working on this forever. Well, let us know for a fact that since the independence of our country, there have been 400 elections that have been conducted entirely. Now, let us also recognize this fact and acknowledge it, that after the independence, we had the policy of One Nation, One Election, and in 1952, 1957 and in 1962, our country basically conducted the electoral polls for Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies together. Now, let us come back to the present, taking inspiration from the countries like Sweden, Belgium, and Britain. The present government wants this particular initiative back. We know that now we are conducting very fragmented and irregular elections all throughout the country, which leads to voter fatigue and low electoral poll turnouts, as it was also witnessed in 2024 Lok Sabha elections. This also leads to political instability. Keeping all of this in mind, the present government cites these following advantages, pros, for this initiative. They claim that One Nation, One Election policy will lead to cost reduction. It is also going to lead to efficient governance and administration of elections and of different national and state matters. The government also, not only the government, the high level committee also cites that because of One Nation, One Election policy, we are going to have less influence of money that will be upon elections. So there will be no muscle and money power now, working. That is what they say. We'll see what happens in the future. Present government also cites that because of this particular initiative, we are going to have higher voter turnout because, well, you will have to maybe go for elections only once. So why would you not go? Why would you ignore this very particular important event, which will happen once every 5 years for all the three different tiers of the government? Because as the reports suggest that we do not have enough EVMs and VVPATs necessary for the conduction of synchronized elections simultaneously in all different parts of the country, and according to a report, 3 times more than the already existing resources will be necessary. So is our country actually ready for this monumental shift? Now, let us know in the comment section what you think about this policy, whether it is going to be advantageous or it is going to be disadvantageous for all of us. Do you think, as a citizen, that this policy, One Nation, One Election, which has been actually taken from the different countries like South Africa, Belgium, and Britain, will it be good for our country? Should we get back to what it was just after the independence, the elections that we had in 1952 to 1962? Let us know what you think about it. Thank you very much.